research to say, here are the best practices of top coaches. First of all, top coaches are better than most managers at being really clear what the performance goals are and where everybody fits in within the team. What each role is and how we play a part, what the big picture is, really making sure that everybody's very clear about where they fit and what's expected of them. And it's probably one of the most common complaints of many people in organizations, maybe it's a complaint you have of your own manager, is I just wish they'd be clear about what they're looking for. Just wish they'd be clear about what the priorities are, about what the goals are. I ran into one manager a few years ago, again, when we were doing some of that assessment kind of work, and here's the response. When we asked them what's happening, he said, well, we have lots of projects, goals, and priorities. We're constantly making lists and setting action plans. We seldom see anything through to completion before some urgent new priority is pushed at us. Our team leader's thinking seems to be random brain impulse. He's like a nervous water bug that flits from one half-baked strategy to another. So that's the exact opposite end of what we're talking about right now, is here's a person with a real problem getting focused and getting clear about what the goals and the priorities are. So that's the first element of good coaching, and these aren't in any particular order, but that's one of the elements of good coaching. And then another element that really came out strongly in Gallup's work, but I remember Drucker from decades ago making the same point in some of his excellent work, which still stands the test of time today. That, and of course at GE, Jack Welch was famous for a lot of the same kind of mindset, which is, how do we get the best out of people and keep building on that? How do I go looking for the good in people? Some of you may be aware of some of the organization development work called appreciative inquiry, which comes from the same idea. How do we figure out what's working, what's strong? How do we manage to the strengths of the people in their team and organization? Or Ken Blanchard calls it catching people doing things right. And then figuring out how you can build on that and strengthen that even further. Because what a whole bunch of research shows, and back to the Gallup stuff on Now Discover Your Strengths, the book that I quoted from earlier, what their research showed is that it's very hard, it's not impossible by any means, but as a manager, you have to kind of pick your battles and figure out where you invest your time, and it's really hard to correct weaknesses, especially big, glaring, difficult weaknesses. Doesn't mean we shouldn't try, and we'll see later on in some video examples some attempts to certainly deal with performance issues. We need to address them and deal with them. But it's saying that rather than trying to change people, change the basic stripes of people, we need to correct problems and performances as they come along. But ideally, we should be coming more from a perspective of what's the strength this individual has, or what are the key good things that they bring to the team, and how can I get more of that? Or how can we build on that? Or how can we align around that more effectively? Again, not to ignore the weaknesses, but that's the main beginning point, is building on strengths. And that's a very different mindset. In fact, it goes to the very heart. I don't want to take this too deep into the philosophical side, but I see a continuum in life generally that has at one end the old McGregor Theory X kind of approach. People are basically bad. They're looking to mess up. You got to watch them every step of the way. You got to supervise the heck out of them. They're just trying to rip you off. It's that kind of mindset. Similar to that mindset is the world is basically evil. The reality is it's a pessimistic reality. When you look at the dictionary definition of pessimism, basically says the world is basically bad and it's tending to evil and there's bad things happening all around us. So it's that kind of pessimistic view of the world. The other end of the continuum is where we're getting at right now, which is that the definition of optimism. The world is basically good. The world is getting better. Things are improving. Yeah, there's problems. We shouldn't ignore those. But things are getting better. Theory Y, people are basically good. People want to do good work. People want to take pride in their work. They want to be part of a winning team. It's my job to figure out how to draw out more of that. So two ends of this continuum, which one is reality? Yes, they're both reality, absolutely. Whichever one we adapt. And then, of course, the whole big fascinating body of research then shows that the Pygmalion effect, as it's been called, which goes back to My Fair Lady, that play, is that whichever reality we make our reality, we then look for the evidence to support it, and it reinforces it. And so we say, see, told you, look, there's one more example. There we go again. And we just keep looking for whatever, whether it's good or bad, and it reinforces it. So this is saying, let's check our assumptions about people, and let's make sure that we're coming from the end of the spectrum that sees the good and tries to bring out the good and accentuate the good. And that's the end of the spectrum of navigator as well. Victim is at the other end of the spectrum. So that's what that one is getting at. And then, of course, you're going to see in a few minutes here in this video a good example, an illustration of how to confront poor performance and some of the steps involved. But again, what good coaches do is they recognize sometimes the most humane thing you can do for someone and the most caring thing you can do for someone is hold them accountable or give them tough feedback around how they're perceived by others. But sometimes we in the interest of maybe wanting to be gentle with people, or in the interest of not wanting to hurt their feelings or self-esteem, or hoping that maybe they'll get the hint, or hoping that things will get better, we avoid a lot of these kinds of conversations, and as a result, everybody suffers. Everybody loses ultimately. So you're going to see some examples of confronting poor performance, but again, good coaches don't save individuals from themselves. As a parent sometimes, especially through the teenage years, that was kind of the tough one that Heather and I kind of chatted about and argued about from time to time, is how do we make sure that the kids get the consequences of their actions and see the consequences of their actions, and we don't save them from themselves. We don't try to cushion them, or don't try to have them avoid some of the consequences of what they're doing. So that's where some of that is coming from as well. And I've already talked to this one on servant leadership. I showed you that chart of drivers and resistors. So this is, again, an ethic, a mindset that says, I'm here to try to figure out how I can support my team, how I can build my team, how I can serve my team. How many of you, for example, are interested in one of your primary goals in your organization is improving customer service levels? How many of you are in that kind of role? Well, there's about half of you here. And so there's a whole bunch of research that shows that there's a direct connection between the level of service that internal servers are getting from the organization and the level of service that they provide to the organization or to their customers. There's a direct connection there, that we tend to reflect the service we are getting from our bosses and our organization to the customer. And there's a whole school of thinking actually on this area, because this was the whole area of customer service and quality improvement was my earlier book, Firing on All Cylinders, was what it was really focused on. And there's a whole bunch of evidence to show that and when you think about it, as Don Cherry, who's our hockey commentator, those of you from outside the country, he's kind of our Yogi Berra in many ways. But as he would say, some of this isn't rocket surgery. When you really think about this, how can a dissatisfied, unhappy employee produce a satisfied customer? It doesn't happen in most cases. So there's a line of thinking that says, there's even some books out called The Customer Comes Second. And some of the top performing customer service organizations put the focus on the frontline server and figure out how to better serve the server in order for them to then serve the customers more effectively. So that's where this is coming from, the whole notion of servant leadership.